My name is Efrain Rovira, and I'm here this morning to talk about something that is a passion of mine. I've always been a planner since I remember, and I've always liked planning for a better tomorrow. So this presentation is is on a book that I was able to complete during the pandemic, and I call that book "The Me of Tomorrow." Now, this morning I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Although I completed a year at Flexera just Tuesday this week, I haven't met most of you. And I think a quick intro on who I am is going to help you connect with why I wrote the book and so on. And then I'll tell you about the book. And although I would love to read the whole book to you, we only have so much time. So I've chosen 3 ideas that I believe can help you plan for a better tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you why I think we should be planning for a better tomorrow. We'll have time to take questions at the end. Yesterday, I recorded myself and timed myself, so I know I'll have time. And although I cannot see all the questions on the chat, I promise to answer all of them once I finish the presentation. Okay? So far, so good. I'm currently the VP of Alliances, Global Alliances at Flexera. I was born and raised in Panama. And I came to the U.S. The first time because I've moved to the U.S. 3 times as part of a scholarship program funded by the Walton family from Walmart. So I owe a lot to Walmart, and I owe a lot to the Walton family. I was part of a program, and it's a program that still continues today, and they pay for 180 students from Central America to go to school. And as those students graduate, they bring more students in. And the idea is to have more people outside of the U.S. thinking about the way of business and freedom and so on. So I wanna plug them there. Since I came to school, like I said, I moved 3 times, and the last time, 27 years ago, I've stayed. I raised a family in Texas, and if you have ever taken the Strength Finder test, you know what I mean when I say I'm a maximizer. And one of the characteristics of a maximizer is a maximizer does not like to waste time. They find time to be that non-renewable resource, and we like to use it very well. So now, having said that, I've met people that say planning is a waste of time, and that's okay. That's their opinion. I think that planning actually provides shortcuts and helps save time, which leads me to how I'm wired and why I wrote this book. Now, the thing about that I like to do is I've always, because of thinking about using my time well, I've always liked to look at patterns and see if there is a recipe I can develop. And it started with work-related things. And I like to have recipes or frameworks so that I don't have to repeat the thinking again if I have already a framework that has worked for me in the past. And of course, I develop these hypotheses and I test them. I find if they're correct or not. I like to refine them, and I have tons of them. And when I was made a people manager early in my career, probably too early, I became a student of leadership because I just wanted to be the best manager I could be. And once I became a student of leadership, then I understood that there was an adjacent theme, which was actual human behavior. And this, as a manager, people came and asked me about where I'm doing well and how can I do better. And I did a lot of coaching, but very quickly, non-work themes picked in, and we started talking about broader themes that were not work, and people started talking about life things. And of course, I engaged and I gave my opinion, and then I started looking at themes and threads and commonalities. And then I developed some ideas, and then I decided that the ideas, actually people told me, said, hey, some of these ideas, you should put them in a book. And it was interesting because if you think about how we are told today about life, they say you got to live for the moment, you got to seize the moment, you got to live for today, and that is something I totally agree with. The thing that always tempers me when I hear that and I think about that is when you go look at life expectancy, most people are probably going to live around 80 years old. So as much as we want to live for the moment, we have to pause and think about the future, because most people on this planet are going to live a lot of years. So we should stop and think about that tomorrow. And we should stop and think about what are the things that we want tomorrow. And here was another kind of common set of themes that I found. And the themes was that people in the long term wanted mostly three things. Most people wanted good health. Most people want positive relationships. And in fact, positive relationships help us have better health. And then some level of financial security. And so these were the three things that I found over and over again that people said, those are the three things that I want for the long game. Now, I have a friend called RJ, and he always reminds me, he says, Efrain, without health, we don't have anything. So of all of these three things, we got to work first on that health, because that's what allows to be in positive relationships, have great relationships, and also provide some financial security. It just makes it harder when we don't have good health. So now it's easy to say that, right? It's easy to say, oh, we got to have all of these three things, but how do we plan for it? And how do we start thinking about it? And the reason is because at times, sometimes these goals are difficult to achieve. Sometimes the economic or health ones are difficult to achieve. And it is because, we do get some pressures when we want to plan, and thinking about the future is not something that we naturally do well. And there's some reasons for that, and some of the reasons have to do with the way human beings are wired. So when we think about tomorrow, we engage our frontal lobe, and for us, the person of the future is like a stranger. So we have to activate the frontal lobe to think about tomorrow. But when we think about that person of 5 years from now, we don't activate it. And therefore, that person is a stranger. It's us, but he's a stranger. Why am I going to be thinking about saving for that person? That's a different person. In fact, I love a skit that Jerry Seinfeld has when he talks about, and you can Google this, you can look it up in YouTube. He talks about Night Jerry and Morning Jerry. And Night Jerry, he stays up late. He doesn't worry about Morning Jerry. Morning Jerry has to think about getting up early. He's already tired. He has got to go to work. But Night Jerry, he's not concerned about Morning Jerry. That's somebody else. And in reality, it kind of is. Now, planning is just not the thing that we're wired to do. So we have to be deliberate about doing it. And then on top of that, we get social pressures. We look to the sides, and we look at our neighbors and our friends and our family. And sometimes we want to have the things that they have. And these social pressures sometimes don't allow us to plan as well for us in the future, especially economically. And then we also get economic pressures. And some of the economic pressures are things that we cannot forecast. We have to take care of a parent or another relative, and we have to spend a significant amount of money there. And so we just can't be thinking about the future, because we got to make sure that we make it today. And so thinking about the future can be difficult. So with this in mind, let me share 3 ideas that I think will help plan for a better tomorrow. And I picked 3 out of the book, and at the end I'll tell you a little bit about what is in the rest of the book. But let me just pick 3 ideas to help us plan for a better tomorrow in the context of Career Week. So the first idea, and when I looked at the presentations this week, I saw that on Tuesday there was a presentation on work-life balance, and there was something presented called the Pie of Life, and Kim Hall is the author of that, and I agree with the fact that when we think about work-life balance, it's not 2 things, because work is one thing. We understand that one. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here in this presentation. But the life thing is a lot more complex than just life. And what happens is that if you only think about it in 2 variables, you may feel like you have a good work-life balance, but you may be leaving something out of the life part that is not in sight, that you're not thinking about. And that is super important to get us to those three things that we want to have: the health, the economic stability, and the good relationships. So I developed, Kim Hall has her model. I have my model. And my model is called the 5 Me's. I think that we are 5 people into one. One of them works, definitely, but we are more than that. And having sight of who those other 5 Me's are is super important, so we can really have a balanced life, or make the trade-off with awareness that we're making the trade-offs, because we always have to make trade-offs. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the 5 Me's. So we're here, it's career week, we're me at work right now, and we understand that one. That one is an important one. It provides for us financially, it provides security for our families, and that is super important. And even if that one is the easiest one to understand. And then we have the me at family. Now this one varies over time. When we're single, the me at family, where it may be our siblings and our parents. When we get married, it is our spouse, if we get married. And then we have children. So this one changes over time. And in the same way, the way you divide the time that you spend with each one of these 5 Me's is going to vary. Now, the second me is the me at family. And then we have what I call the me, friends, and community, because we're part of a bigger group. And there is research that says that people with strong friendships live a long time and live a healthy life. And there is something called the blue zones, and you can research. I have this in the book, but you can research, which is there are certain areas where friendships are so strong that people live longer lives because they're healthy. So taking care of the me at friends, it's also an important enhancer of a better tomorrow. There's another me that gets neglected in the pursuit of sometimes work and family, and that is what I called the me. And this one is the one that likes to do things for the sake of what we like to do. On the one hand, is the ones that make sure that we stay healthy and take care of ourselves, but also is our passions, the things that we like to do. And I'm a firm believer that in order for the other me's to be able to function in the best possible way, we have to take care of that me. And I talk about that, about my ideas about how to take care of that me in the book. And then for some people, there's also a me spiritual. And I actually separate it from the me because I think the me is more of a physical, what I like to do, and then the me spiritual is a little bit different. And not everybody may have all of the 5. Somebody may say, oh, I'm only made out of the top 4. That's fine. But I wanted to throw it there because I do believe that some people have that me spiritual. Now, in balancing life, and this brings me to the topic of the balance and the idea, the first idea. The way I think about it is I think about a yard of string, and you divide it up. You can use the analogy of 24 hours. You can use a yard of string, but when you're using a piece of string for one type of me, that is consumed. It doesn't get used for something else. So here's where we have to understand that everybody, no matter who you are, from one country or another, young or older, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, everybody gets the same yard. We just don't get more. We get 24 hours. And so we have to, I believe it's better. You'll be able to live a better life if you consider this when you make decisions about how you spend your time, and understand that you're making trade-offs. And every trade-off has a price that you pay and has a benefit that you get, but you make trade-offs. Now, one of the things in working on this model that I thought about was that there could be activities that would have a higher return. And I remember when my children were younger and they both swam, and I would have to go to swim meets. And I know that some people, when I say that, people say, oh, the parents of swimmers are crazy because you go to those long swim meets and that last all Saturday and you sacrifice all of that time. But for me, one of my passions is video and photography. So I was a team photographer. And I developed very strong friendships with the parents of the other swimmers. And I like seeing my kids swim. And in my model, to me, that was a high ROI time spent because it impacted the me, the videographer and photographer. It impacted the me family, and it also impacted the me, friends, and community. And I believe that if we're able to find more times where we can have more than one of the me's being addressed, hey, maybe you get more than a yard by getting a yard, by still getting a yard. You maybe get 25, 26, 27 hours worth of time during the day, because that's a higher hour or a higher ROI activity, because it impacts more of who you are, of that person. That is you. Now, just to get you thinking a little bit about this, I'll give you 3 examples of 3 people. I picked 3 people at random that we all know. And then tell me, or put in the chat, for example, which one do you think would be the dominating me? For example, if you think about Martin Luther King, what was in the 5 me's, which was the me that dominated Martin Luther King? If you think about in our industry, great inventor, Steve Jobs, what was the me that dominated Steve Jobs? If you think about Pope Francis, which me dominates Pope Francis? And you'll start to see that we all have a different mix of the me's. And I never try to say that one is better than the other. They are what they are. We just need to be aware of what they are. The other point I want to make is I have watched my 5 me's change over time. When I was first married, had no children, there was a certain me mix. And then when the children were born, and then when they were teenagers, and now that they're out of the house, I find, for example, that me at work has more time now, to be very candid with you, because I don't have the swim meets on Saturday, and I don't have some of the activities I had to come to in the evenings. It's my wife and I now. So I still talk to my children, of course, but it's just the amount of time that I have to dedicate to that has changed over time. And that's the other thing that's going to change. So that's one idea about having a better tomorrow, being able to understand and being deliberate about how you plan for a better tomorrow and how you balance your life. Another idea that I have that fulfills those 3 things that we all want is the way we think about money. And money is an important enabler of safety and security. I mean, financial health and safety. And when we have money problems, it causes other problems, right? So I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you a question. And when I was talking to the person that helped me, was my ghostwriter, Nick, he said, "Friend, you're going to ask the question and you're not going to give him all the data." I still want to ask you the question and I'll tell you why. So 2 people walk into a room with their savings in a bag, and each of them has $100,000. And the question I like to ask is, who has more savings? Nick was telling me, "Efrain, you haven't given them all the data." And that is true. But I want you to think about this. If 2 people have $100,000 in savings, does either of the 2 have more savings, or do they have the same amount of money? Let's think about that for a minute. If you want to comment in the chat, feel free to do. But I have a way in which I think about that, which is the second piece of data. And that is that if a person spends $5,000 a month and the other person has a lifestyle that spends $10,000 a month, they may both have $100,000, but one has 20 months worth of savings, and the other only has 10 months worth of savings. So they may have the same amount of money in absolute terms, but in relative terms, which is the way I believe you ought to look at this, one has more money than the other. Because at the end of the day, savings is a little bit of something that gives you freedom and independence or stability. And it may mean, just to say something, how many months you could go without work, for example. Not that we want that, of course, but it's just a way of you thinking about that financial security. And for that, I've developed this model. And the way I think about wealth is really in levels. And the levels go from level 1, where you spend everything you earn. And then level 2, now you have a little bit of savings. Level 3, you have more savings. Level 4, now you have a couple of years of of spending in your savings, and then level 5 you have even more. And so, two things here. People immediately think that, well, the more money I make, then the higher level I'm going to be. And I'm going to tell you that I have actually seen people that make over $1 million a year in their W-2 that are level 1s, that spend all the money that they make. And you say, but how can somebody do that? Well, if you travel a lot, if you buy expensive things, and in the case of this person, he attended with his family every Super Bowl, and he was just always able to find ways of spending all the $2 million a year he made. And he was a level 1. And so the fact that you make more money doesn't mean that you're a higher level, because the key to wealth is how you manage your expenses. Because keeping your money is actually harder sometimes than actually making it. Making money may even be easier than actually keeping the money. And there is a person that I don't know how many of you have heard of Ronald Reed. And Ronald Reed was a janitor in Vermont. He died, and the day he died, he had an inheritance that he left of $8 million. Now, that was the opposite of the person I knew with the $2 million. This was a person that did not make a lot of money, but this person was way above a level 5. So the key here is to think about wealth in a way that incorporates expenses, not just absolute dollars. So that's my second idea for a better tomorrow. Not only think about the numerator, the amount of money you have, but think about the denominator, the amount of money you spend, in order to truly understand how wealthy you are or can be. Okay, and this takes me to the third idea on a better tomorrow, and the theme of Career Week. And I make an argument here that we are all interested in getting ahead professionally. And the metric that we use is, okay, I'm going to be a manager, then I'm going to be a director, then I'm going to be a VP, then I'm going to be a senior VP. And we always tend to think about it from a title point of view. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I like to offer up a different way, which is think about how relevant you are in your organization and to your business, because when you become more relevant, you're going to get all of the titles. But it puts you in a different mindset. And you may say, well, it's the same thing. Well, not really. One is very title oriented. And this is something else that I've seen in companies. There are some people that they're constantly saying that they want to go to that next title, and they are smarter than that other manager. Therefore they're the ones that ought to get promoted to director next, and so on and so forth. And that's a model, that's a way. But I do believe that people will tend to help others in their team if it becomes about having a greater impact in the business, which is what I call that relevance, versus just pursuing a promotion. Who likes someone that is telling you that they deserve or want a promotion all the time? I don't think that people that are always talking about it in that way are the most liked. And let me tell you how I think about this, and then I'm going to tell you my hypothesis about how to become more relevant. So the first thing is that in an organization, you do have some people that have a great amount of relevance. They're people that are at times gatekeepers to the time of higher level people, and they may have a lot of relevance. They may not have a big title, but we all know that they're very relevant to the organization. And then you have other people in other cultures, in other countries, before some people never get pushed out of a company. What they do is they give them a desk and they keep the title, and they don't have any relevance. They're not consulted for anything. And that's on the top left on the blue. Somebody with a big title, not a lot of relevance, not a lot of influence. On the green star, is somebody with a lot of relevance, maybe not a lot of title. And then everybody else is in between. Now, we could map a small development team into this map. We could map a whole company into this map. The fact of the matter is that we all have a corresponding relevance and title, and we all sit there. And when we get started in a company, we're this little blue stick person on the bottom left-hand side, we don't have much relevance and we don't know how much title. We're entry level, and we barely know where the cafeteria is and where the bathroom is. We know who our boss is, and we know the people that interviewed us, but beyond that, we don't know that much. But with time, we develop ourselves. We may get a promotion or two. Now we're more relevant in the team or in the organization, and now we have somewhat of a better title. And the way I like to think about this is that the very first line that we cross in this imaginary map that I have here is an awareness line. Because now when we cross that line, we start to understand how the company is run, who the players are, who my boss's boss is, who the peers of my boss's boss are. And we start to become more aware about how the company works. And we're more effective, we're more relevant. And then we continue in our journey of development, and we move farther up and to the right, and I cross what I call an effectiveness line, what's called an effectiveness line, which is now we are part of teams and groups that make recommendations to senior management, that works on problems, and we really occupy a space where things actually happen so that senior leadership can make the strategic directions or decisions that need to be made. And eventually, for a few people, they cross the last imaginary line here, which is sort of the inner circle line, the leadership line. And that's where the people, if we map it out in a 50 people organization, well, that's where the manager of that team and some of the direct reports are. If we map it in a bigger organization, that may be where there's a CEO. But any organization you can map like this, as long as there's a number of people, and there are always going to be people that are leading that organization, and then some of the rest of us that may be as part of what I called the place where things happen, which is this space called the political environment. And I know political has some terms and negative connotations, but what it means here is just where things happen, where the work gets done, so senior management can make decisions and can take the company where the company needs to go. Now, I have observed, and here is something I wanted to say, I have observed people, and this has happened more than once during my career, where there is somebody that has a ton of relevance, and they don't have a big title. And what ends up happening is I've seen 2 layers of management above them in their cube, or this person getting invited to meetings to express their point of view. And it starts to be something that doesn't match. It's like, how can somebody have so much relevance but not a big title? And what ends up happening is that these people actually move up rather quickly in sort of a straight line. And I witnessed in some of my previous jobs, in large companies, people go from a manager of people to a vice president, totally skipping all of the levels of director. Doesn't happen often, but that's what happens when somebody gets so much relevance that the title doesn't match the relevance. Now, the question and what we're going to get into now is, okay, I got it. Let's say I believe on the model. So how do I become more relevant? And what I've always said is the very first thing you need to understand to become more relevant is you have to understand what your company values are, and you need to live them. And at Flexera, we have 6 values that are very well known: candor, passion, professionalism. We like to keep score. We like to celebrate success, and we like to give back. And when we do our all hands with Jem, he reminds us of these values. And I've had conversations with David Swick and with others, and they remind me of how we always, for example, keep score, or how we gotta be candid about the way we approach everybody. And so the very first thing we have to do is to understand the company values and live them. Now, I've come up with an additional set of attributes that I've seen over the years that are also helpful in increasing that level of relevance. And the goal is to provide you a framework, to provide people a framework, like a checklist. And this doesn't mean to be exhaustive, by the way. There can be other things depending on the type of team. There can be things that may be missing or things that may not be necessary. But this is an attempt at coming up with some attributes that can help you increase your relevance in the organization. And the way I divided them up is I divided them in three themes, sort of the things that you have to, the way you think, the way you behave yourself or carry yourself, and then the way things you do. And so on the think side, and I've seen this at Flexera. Flexera, planning is important. The very first thing that people that get ahead do is they have a plan, and the plan has firm dates, and the plan has goals, and these plans are shared with their manager. Hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Does this make sense to you? Planners are always going to, when you compare two people, if you have a planner, that planner is probably going to get more relevance because you need to not only have it in your head, but have it in writing and share it with others so you can get input, and that plan can be solid. Now, one thing we do when we plan and when we have an idea about something, we create it with a lot of passion, and that is super important. And that's one of our values. Creating with passion our plans is important. But the way we persuade others to follow our plan is we persuade with numbers. And the people that become more relevant in organizations, they plan with passion, but when it comes to persuading, they persuade with numbers. We are fact-driven. We have to be fact-driven. And just in the theme of planning, priorities, understanding that not everything is the same level of importance. When somebody comes to you and says, I got to do these 10 things, and you say, which ones are the most important ones? And they say, no, I got to do them all. That's a red flag. Because the problem is that in a list of 10, if 3 are more important, if we're not careful, they can become 7, 8, and 9, and they don't get done because there is not enough time, and you have just made a huge mistake. So understanding what must be done versus what should be done versus what would be nice to be done, always, when people talk in that way and execute in that way, it helps us become more relevant. The same way that when we are proposing our ideas, we tend to talk a lot about how this is going to help with our bookings, or this is going to help with our retention. We also have to think about the cost of doing that. And again, just like in the piece about money, numerator and denominator, here when we think about proposing ideas, those that are considered all of the variables, not only how much more we're going to sell, but how much it's going to cost us, are always going to be thought of as being more thoughtful, and they're going to become more relevant. And then if you think about the balance sheet in addition to that, not only the P&L, then even more so. Which leads me to sort of the behavioral ones, and the ones that I've observed that is the way sort of you carry yourself. And again, this one is a value at Flexera. I use these certain words. I talk about showing results. At Flexera is we keep score, and we have to have a bias for execution. And at the end of the day, the work that we do is valuable, but what matters is what did we get out of the work. We have to be results oriented. We have to have a bias to what actually gets achieved versus the work that we get put into. Make no mistake, in order to achieve results, we have to work hard, but we have to keep sight that what matters is the results. And in the same way, holding ourselves accountable. And this one has to do with when things don't go well. For example, people have two options. And I believe this is in a book called From Good to Great. And the author talks about people that run to the window to blame others. When something goes and doesn't go as well, they run to the window and say, oh, this didn't work because of that and that and that. Versus stopping at the mirror first and said, what could I have done that would have made that situation different? Did I do everything I could? And so I find that the people that hold themselves accountable for what happens and they stop at the mirror before they run to the window are going to be more relevant in our organization. The people that play the blame game are not going to do well in organizations. They're not going to be relevant. The other one that has to do with behavior is is the ability to manage yourself. And I'm not saying that you go rogue and you don't tell your manager what you're doing. No, you have to have a plan. Remember, we talked about the plan. You have to agree on the plan. You have to understand the trade-offs. But you have to, as much as possible, don't become too much of a burden for your manager to spend too much time with you, because then you're consuming too much precious bandwidth. Now, I'm not saying you go and you don't check with the manager, and you absolutely do, and you have your O3s every week. But what I'm saying is, you cannot be asking your manager at every point of the way, at every step, what do I have to do next? What do I do next? Because then you're not managing yourself as effectively, and you are going to become more relevant. The next one is a well-known one. Business is a team sport. We win together and we lose together, and so team players are always going to work within the organization and do more, achieve more, and therefore they're going to become more relevant. And then the next one is the next one in this set of attributes, this list of attributes, is one where when we talk about a situation, and I've seen this at Flexera, and I hear it from my manager all the time, let's not dwell on what happened. Let's think about what are we going to do now to fix it. So I always say, if you have a 10-minute conversation, let 1 minute be about the problem and what happened, and let 9 minutes be about what you're going to do about it to solve the problem. It cannot be 9 minutes of all the problems we have and then 1 minute on solution. No, it needs to be flipped. It needs to be very quickly. This is what happened. This is the problem. This did not work. This is what we're going to do about it. And I've witnessed that one at Flexera all the way from our CEO. He wants us to be focused on what are we going to do about it, not what the problem was. This next one is a favorite of mine, because I don't think we think about this one enough. And the phrase is kingmaker, but you can think of it as a queen maker as well. But when something goes well and you get kudos, especially if you get kudos in front of a lot of people, make sure that if somebody helped you with something, you give them credit when you get kudos, as you get the kudos. As you get congratulated, don't take all the credit and just absorb it and not share it. If somebody helped you, make sure you say, yeah, thank you very much. That worked really well, but I couldn't have done it if so-and-so did not provide me that piece of information, if so-and-so didn't help me with that. And here's the reason why. Because when you do that publicly and people hear you give credit to the people that help you, the next time you need help from somebody, they're going to be willing to help you, and they're going to be willing to help you faster, because they know that when you're going to get that credit, you're going to give some of that credit to others. So I always like to say that the people that are kingmakers or queen makers end up being the ultimate kings, because they get more people to help them do their work. And so people that are king or queen makers become more relevant. Now, in terms of doing, in an organization, there's always teams that are dedicated to do different things. You don't want to replicate their work. If you need something from, and I'm going to say from marketing, don't create a marketing piece. Go talk to the people in marketing and say, hey, I need this. And if they don't do it the way you want to do it, explain to them how you want it done. But leverage others. Do not duplicate work. Because when you duplicate work, you're not using the assets of the company in the best possible way. That's why we have different functions. Let people do the things that they need to do. And if they don't do them the way you want to do, explain to them why, so you don't replicate work. Leverage the work of other people, of the people that have to do the job that are supposed to do it. And in doing so, drive alignment. Because again, this is another one that has to do with using the assets of the company effectively. And you're going to become more relevant if you use the assets of the company effectively. Instead of going and doing something for 15 or 21 days or 30 days without telling people what you're doing, what if you're going in the wrong direction? What if you're not? What if the idea doesn't get approved? No, get people aligned first to make sure that you are doing things that are in alignment with what the company wants, with what your team wants, with what everybody's doing. Okay. Next one is a well-known one. Another attribute, showing a strong work ethic. If you show a strong work ethic, of course, if there are two people and one has a stronger work ethic than the other one, that person with the stronger work ethic is going to be more relevant. And the last one, and this one, it's a little bit of a passionate one for me, just like the Kingmaker one, which is you're part of a team, you're part of an organization, and you're in a meeting. If you have an idea, don't keep the idea to yourself. Sometimes people say, "Oh, but I don't know if it's a good idea. Oh, it's going to be. I don't want to sound dumb." Well, in your idea may spark another idea that is super important and will not get sparked if you didn't say yours. I believe that people that keep their ideas to themselves cheat the organization of their knowledge, of their expertise, of their value. So be vocal and express what you think and contribute to the overall thinking of the group. Okay, so what this was meant to be, this is the third idea on how to have a better tomorrow is becoming more relevant at work. But the point here is to have sort of a checklist of a framework that you can use with your manager, with your peers, to get more aware of where you are and where you're stronger or where you have areas of opportunity. And I know that there are different models. Some people say you need to play for your strengths and don't focus on your weaknesses. Play to your strengths, get your strengths to be even better. And that's okay. Some other people like to mitigate their weaknesses. Regardless of the model, awareness of where you're stronger and where you have areas of opportunity is going to be super important for you to understand and for you to develop confidence in where you are. And we all have O3s at Flexera, and that's one of the things that I like the most about the culture here is how focused we are on our O3s. One thing you can do in your next O3 is ask your manager, say, hey, of this list of these attributes, which one am I displaying? Which one can you see? Which one you cannot see? Is that important that you see some of the ones that you cannot see? Should I be working on some of those because I need to display more of that? Have a conversation. But don't leave it to your manager only. Talk to your peers. On Tuesday, during Career Week, we talked about seeking feedback and understanding where you're strong and where you have areas of opportunity is important. It's okay to talk to your peers. It's okay to tell the people that are reporting to you, because the more aware you are, then the better opportunity you have to work on what matters and become more relevant. So this is a framework. And again, just a list. Now, I believe that a career progression can go something like this. With this awareness, you're going to believe in yourself more. You're going to be more confident. And what happens when you become more confident is you behave in a different way, because now you have confidence that you're doing the things that are important. So you behave with confidence. And people notice. And then after people notice, then it's given to you. Okay? So does this make sense? I hope it does. I'm coming up on the end here. Let me summarize for you. So I believe that life is more complex than just two variables, work and life. I think we need to go to the next level of detail and peel the onion and on the life part. There's you, that the you allows for the other one to work. You need to be healthy, not only physically but mentally, and then you can provide. Then you can work better. You can provide for your family, and then the second idea is don't think about money in just absolute terms. Think on savings and spending, because that's really key to wealth, and then seek relevance as you think about your career. I will close with just giving you the table of contents on the book. I told you a little bit today about chapter 1. I extracted some things there and out of chapter 2, and then about chapter 5 and 6. One of my favorite chapters is actually the learning for life, because again, just like taking care of you enables you to be able to take care of the other me's, I think that learning and being curious is important in order to have a better tomorrow, because that's the enabler for you to learn more about all of those other aspects of life. And I close the book with an offering of how to build a strategy about how to pick a topic or an area of opportunity and then start to work in a very simple, pragmatic way, sort of in the Atomic Habits kind of way. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here and thank you for hanging with me, and then I'll be happy to take some questions.